26-year-old virgin entered the wrong room, slept with her boss, got pregnant, and now he... Before we explore all the details of this incredible story, tell us where you're following us from and the time. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a thing, and let's embark on this journey together. The Atlanta skyline glowed against the darkening February sky as Alexia Monroe rushed through the revolving doors of the Hilton downtown, her wheeled suitcase catching on the metal trim. Her chocolate-brown curls, usually contained in a neat, low bun, had started to escape after 15 hours of travel delays and corporate presentations. She pressed her fingers against her temples, fighting the headache that had been building since her connecting flight from Chicago. "Just need to get to my room," she whispered to herself, fishing out the keycard from her blazer pocket. The lobby's elegant lighting seemed too bright, every click of her sensible heels against the marble floor echoing in her exhausted mind. Room 1542. The numbers blurred slightly as she blinked at the card. The elevator ride felt endless. Alexia leaned against the mirrored wall, studying her reflection. Her camel-colored pencil skirt and cream blouse still looked presentable, but her eyes told a different story. Those honey-brown eyes, usually bright and observant, now showed the weight of a day spent trying to disappear into boardroom walls while delivering quarterly projections. The corridor on the 15th floor stretched before her, thick carpet muffling her steps. 1538, 1540, 1542. Alexia slid the keycard into the slot, relief washing over her as the light turned green. She pushed the door open, wheeling her suitcase inside. The room was darker than expected, illuminated only by the city lights filtering through partially drawn curtains. Something felt off, but her tired mind couldn't quite process what. The air carried an unfamiliar scent, a masculine cologne that seemed to wrap around her senses. "I believe you're in the wrong room." The deep voice cut through the darkness like a blade. Alexia's heart stopped, then kicked into overdrive. A tall figure emerged from the shadows near the window, and the room's light suddenly blazed to life. Caio Sebastian Wolf stood before her, his 6'3" frame commanding the space in a way that made the executive suite feel somehow smaller. His dark hair was slightly damp, as if he'd recently showered, and he wore black tailored pants and a white dress shirt, with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows. But it was his eyes that held her frozen, steel grey, almost silver in the artificial light, studying her with an intensity that made her feel transparent. I'm so sorry," Alexia stammered, her fingers clutching the handle of her suitcase like a lifeline. "The key worked, I thought." "The hotel assigned the same room twice," he stated, his tone businesslike despite the unusual situation. "I noticed the error earlier and informed the front desk." He moved toward the room phone. "I'll call them now." "No, please," Alexia said quickly, already backing toward the door. "I'll go down myself. I'm so sorry for the intrusion, Mr. Wolf." His eyebrow arched slightly. "You know who I am." Of course she did. Everyone in the corporate world knew Caio Sebastian Wolf, the ruthless negotiator, who had transformed his family's New York law firm into a global consulting empire. She'd seen him from afar at conferences, watched his TED Talks, studied his business strategies. But nothing had prepared her for his presence in person, the way he seemed to bend reality around himself, like a gravitational force. "We attended the same conference in Chicago last month," she explained, her voice smaller than she intended. "I was part of the team presenting the Southeast market analysis." Something flickered in those silver eyes. Recognition, perhaps. Alexia Monroe, the projections specialist who challenged the board's assumptions about millennial spending patterns. She felt heat rise to her cheeks. She hadn't expected him to remember that moment, one of the rare times she'd found the courage to speak up in a room full of executives. "Yes, that was me." The air between them seemed to thicken with unspoken tension. Caio took a step closer, and Alexia caught herself holding her breath. He smelled like expensive cologne and fresh rain, a dangerously appealing combination. "Your analysis was impressive," he said, his voice dropping slightly. It showed unusual insight into human behavior patterns. He was close enough now that she had to tilt her head back to meet his gaze. "Something tells me you see more than you let on, Ms. Monroe." The compliment wrapped around her like silk, but there was something else in his tone, a question perhaps, or a challenge. Alexia felt her carefully constructed professional walls wavering. She was used to being overlooked, to being the quiet observer in the room. But Caio Wolf was seeing her, really seeing her, and it was terrifying and thrilling in equal measure. "Thank you," she managed, proud that her voice remained steady. but I should really go sort out this room situation. Allow me to escort you to the front desk, he offered, reaching for his suit jacket. It's the least I can do considering they've inconvenienced you at this hour. That's not necessary. I insist. He held the door open, his expression leaving no room for argument. Besides, my word tends to carry some weight with hotel management. The elevator ride down was silent, charged with an awareness that made Alexia's skin tingle. She stole glances at his reflection in the mirrored walls, the sharp line of his jaw, the controlled power in his stance. Everything about him radiated discipline and authority, yet there was something else, something hidden beneath the surface that called to the part of her that always looked deeper. At the front desk, Kaio handled the situation with the same efficiency he probably used in million-dollar negotiations. Within minutes, Alexia had a new room, an upgraded suite on the 16th floor, and a profusely apologetic hotel manager. "Thank you," she said as they stood in the lobby, suddenly uncertain how to end this unexpected encounter. "You didn't have to do all this. Sometimes the universe makes mistakes that turn out not to be mistakes at all," he replied, those silver eyes holding hers for a moment too long. "Good night, Miss Monroe." Alexia watched him walk away, his tall figure cutting through the lobby with practiced ease. Only when he disappeared into the executive lounge did she let out the breath she'd been holding. In her new room, larger and more luxurious than she was used to, Alexia stood at the window, looking out at the Atlanta skyline. Her heart was still racing, her mind replaying every moment of the encounter. She had spent years building walls around herself, protecting her heart, choosing solitude over shallow connections. One chance meeting shouldn't be able to shake those foundations. But as she finally lay down to sleep, Alexia couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted in her carefully ordered world, like the first tremor before an earthquake, invisible but irreversible. She closed her eyes, trying to push away thoughts of steel-gray eyes and the scent of rain. Little did she know, 16 floors below in the hotel's executive lounge, Kaio Sebastian Wolf sat with an untouched glass of scotch, his thoughts occupied by honey-brown eyes and quiet strength. For the first time in years, his carefully constructed world of control and precision felt somehow incomplete, as if he'd caught a glimpse of something genuine in a world of corporate facades, something that all his success and power couldn't give him. The night wrapped around them both, two souls unknowingly standing on the edge of a transformation neither had seen coming. Sometimes the biggest changes come not with grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but in quiet moments, when guards are down and tired souls accidentally find each other in the dark. 3 weeks had passed since that fateful night at the Hilton downtown, but Alexia couldn't shake the memories. She sat at her desk in the Atlanta office, staring at spreadsheets that seemed to blur before her eyes. The morning sickness had started 2 days ago, but she'd dismissed it as stress. After all, it couldn't be Earth to Alexia. Olivia Grace Bennett's voice cut through her thoughts. Her best friend perched on the edge of her desk, green eyes sparkling with concern. "You've been staring at that same cell for 10 minutes. Spill." Alexia glanced around the open-plan office, grateful that most of her colleagues were at lunch. "Not here, Liv. Fine. Grab your bag. We're getting smoothies." Olivia's tone left no room for argument, her blonde-brown hair swinging as she stood up decisively. 20 minutes later, they sat in a quiet corner of their favorite juice bar. Olivia, wearing ripped designer jeans and an oversized blazer that somehow looked both professional and effortlessly cool, studied her friend's face. "Okay, what's going on? You've been off since that business trip. Did something happen in Chicago?" Alexia wrapped her hands around her untouched ginger smoothie. "Atlanta, actually. After Chicago." She took a deep breath. "I met Kaio Wolf." "The Kaio Wolf? Ice King of Wall Street? Mr. Tall, Dark, and Terrifying?" Olivia leaned forward. "Define met." "I accidentally went into his hotel room." Alexia's voice dropped to a whisper. The key worked. There was a mix-up with the room assignments. And something happened. Alexia felt heat rise to her cheeks. "Something I never planned. He was different than I expected. Gentle, almost. Like he saw past all my walls." Olivia's eyes widened. "Wait, are you saying what I think you're saying? You, Alexia Monroe, who once turned down Bachelor number 1 because his tie didn't match his socks?" "It wasn't like that," Alexia interrupted. "It was real, raw. Like for one night, we both stopped pretending to be who everyone expects us to be." She pushed her smoothie away, her stomach churning. "And now I think I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air between them. Olivia reached across the table, squeezing her friend's hand. "Have you taken a test?" 3. All positive. Alexia's voice trembled. I don't know what to do, Liv. He's Caio Wolf. He probably doesn't even remember that night. That's bullshit and you know it. Olivia's voice was firm but gentle. The way you described it, that's not something a person forgets. Have you tried to contact him? How? Send an email to his corporate office. Dear Mr. Wolf, remember that night in Atlanta? Surprise. Alexia laughed bitterly. He lives in a different world, Liv. A world of power lunches and billion-dollar deals. You're just the brilliant analyst who's been running circles around your department for the past 3 years. Olivia cut in. The woman who single-handedly restructured the Southeast market strategy. Don't you dare minimize yourself. Before Alexia could respond, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and the blood drained from her face. What? Olivia asked. There's an all-hands meeting this afternoon. The New York executive team is flying in for a major announcement. Alexia's hands shook slightly, including Caio Wolf. The office was buzzing with nervous energy when they returned. Alexia sat through 2 hours of mind-numbing presentations, barely registering the words, and then he walked in. Caio commanded the room without effort, his dark suit impeccably tailored, his presence making the large conference room feel somehow smaller. His silver-grey eyes swept the crowd, and for a fraction of a second they locked with hers. Something flickered in their depths. Recognition, surprise, something more. The merger will be finalized by the end of the quarter, he was saying, his deep voice carrying to every corner. I'll be personally overseeing the transition from the Atlanta office over the next few months. Alexia felt the room spin slightly. Months. He would be here for months. After the meeting, she tried to slip out quietly, but his voice stopped her. Ms. Monroe, a moment! Her heart thundered as colleagues filed past, leaving them alone in the conference room. Caio stood by the window, the late afternoon sun casting his profile in sharp relief. I trust you found your room satisfactory that night. His tone was professional, but there was an undercurrent of something else. Yes, thank you. Alexia forced herself to meet his gaze. Mr. Wolf, Caio, he corrected softly. I think we're past formalities, don't you? The tenderness in his voice, so different from his corporate persona, made her breath catch. Caio, I need to tell you something. He took a step closer, and suddenly she was back in that hotel room, surrounded by his presence, his scent, the invisible pull between them. I've thought about you, he admitted, his voice low. More than I should. I'm pregnant. The words fell between them like stones in still water. Alexia watched his face, waiting for the shock, the denial, the rapid retreat she'd imagined 1,000 times. Instead, Caio was absolutely still, his silver eyes studying her face with an intensity that made her want to look away. But she held his gaze, chin lifted slightly, refusing to apologize for the truth. You're certain? His voice was carefully controlled. Yes. He moved to the conference room door and locked it, then returned to stand before her. Tell me what you want, Alexia, not what you think I want to hear. What do you want? The question caught her off guard. In all her scenarios, she hadn't expected him to ask about her wishes. I want to keep the baby, she said softly, but I don't expect anything from you. I can handle this on my own. No. You don't have to handle this on your own. Caio ran a hand through his dark hair, the first sign of genuine emotion she'd seen from him in the corporate setting. I know my reputation. I know what people say about me, but I'm not the kind of man who walks away from his responsibilities. More than that, he paused, choosing his words carefully. More than that, I'm not the kind of man who can forget a night like that. Who can forget you? Tears pricked at Alexia's eyes, but she blinked them back. This isn't just about responsibility, Caio. This is a child. A life, it changes everything. Then let it change everything. He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of darker grey in his eyes. That night, you saw me. Not the corporate shark, not the wolf heir, just me. No one's done that in a very long time. A knock at the door made them both jump. Mr. Wolf, the video conference with Tokyo is in 5 minutes. A moment, he called out, then turned back to Alexia. Have dinner with me tonight. We need to talk. Really talk. Alexia hesitated. I don't know if that's a good idea. Probably not, he agreed, a hint of a smile softening his features. But I think we're past good ideas, don't you? She found herself nodding, and he quickly wrote down an address on a business card. 8 o'clock. It's a private restaurant. No corporate eyes, no expectations. Just us. As Alexia walked back to her desk on shaky legs, she passed Olivia, who raised an eyebrow in silent question. I'm having dinner with him tonight, she whispered. Holy shit, Olivia mouthed, then grabbed her arm. You're coming to my place first. No way are you wearing anything from your current wardrobe for this conversation. Later, as Alexia stood in Olivia's bedroom surrounded by discarded outfit options, her friend stopped fussing with clothes and pulled her into a tight hug. Whatever happens tonight, you've got this. And you've got me. Always. Alexia hugged her back, grateful for the unconditional support. What if this is all a huge mistake? The biggest changes in life usually look like mistakes at first, Olivia said wisely. Sometimes you have to let go of the life you plan to make room for the life that's waiting for you. As the sun set over Atlanta, Alexia looked at herself in the mirror. She wore a simple black dress that somehow made her look both elegant and approachable, her curls falling freely around her shoulders. For once, she didn't feel the need to hide or minimize herself. Whatever happened tonight would change everything. But maybe, just maybe, that was exactly what both she and Kaio needed. A chance to break free from the careful boxes they'd built around themselves and discover who they could be together. The restaurant was hidden away in a renovated brownstone in Atlanta's historic district. Alexia stepped out of her Uber, her heart racing as she took in the understated elegance of the building. No sign marked its entrance, just a simple brass number on a dark blue door. Before she could reach for the handle, the door opened. Kaio stood there and Alexia's breath caught. He'd changed from his corporate armor into dark jeans and a charcoal cashmere sweater that somehow made him look both more approachable and more devastatingly attractive. "You look beautiful," he said softly, his silver eyes taking in her appearance with an intensity that made her skin tingle. "Thank you." She followed him inside, where a discreet host led them through the intimate space. The restaurant was clearly exclusive. Only 5 tables occupied the main floor, each separated by clever architectural details that created perfect privacy. But Kaio guided her past these, up a narrow staircase to a private dining room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a hidden garden. A single table was set with fine china and crystal, soft lighting creating an intimate atmosphere. "I hope this is okay," he said, pulling out her chair. "I thought we needed somewhere we could really talk." "It's perfect," Alexia replied, trying to calm her nerves. Up close, she could smell his cologne, that same intoxicating scent from the hotel room that had haunted her dreams. A sommelier appeared, and Kaio ordered sparkling water for both of them without hesitation. The gesture, his immediate consideration for her condition, touched something deep inside her. "How are you feeling?" he asked once they were alone, his tone gentle. "Any morning sickness?" "Some," she admitted, "though it seems to hit more in the afternoon. I've been living on ginger tea and crackers." "Have you seen a doctor yet?" She shook her head. "I have an appointment next week. I only confirmed it with home tests a few days ago." Kaio's hands tightened slightly on his water glass. "I'd like to be there, at the appointment, if you'll let me." The vulnerability in his voice, so different from his corporate persona, made Alexia look up sharply. "You don't have to—" "Please stop telling me what I don't have to do," he interrupted, but his tone was soft. "I want to be involved, Alexia. Not out of obligation, but because—" He paused, seeming to struggle with words for the first time since she'd met him. "Because that night meant something. You meant something." The chef arrived then, presenting a tasting menu that had clearly been planned with pregnancy restrictions in mind. Each dish was a work of art, but Alexia barely tasted them. She was too caught up in the man across from her, who seemed to be slowly letting his carefully constructed walls crumble. "Tell me about your family," she said between courses, wanting to understand him better. A shadow crossed his face. "Not much to tell. My parents are corporate lawyers in New York. Success was the only acceptable outcome in our household. Emotions were seen as inefficient." "That sounds lonely." It was. He met her eyes. "Until that night in the hotel, I thought that's just how life was. Controlled, calculated. Then you walked in and suddenly everything I thought I knew about myself came into question." "What do you mean?" Kaio was quiet for a moment, swirling water in his crystal glass. "I've been with women before, beautiful, accomplished women who made perfect sense on paper. But with you, it was different, raw, real. For the first time in my life, I wasn't thinking about consequences or appearances. I was just feeling." "I know what you mean," Alexia said softly. "I've spent so long being careful, building walls, protecting myself. But that night," she took a shaky breath, "it was like all my defenses meant nothing, like you saw right through them." "You a virgin?" he said quietly. It wasn't a question. "Yes." She lifted her chin slightly, refusing to be embarrassed. "I was waiting. Not for marriage necessarily, but for something real, something that mattered. Kaio reached across the table, taking her hand. His touch sent electricity through her veins. It mattered, Alexia, more than I think either of us realized at the time. The dessert arrived, a delicate chocolate creation that the chef described in detail, but Alexia barely heard him. She was too focused on Kaio's thumb drawing small circles on her palm, each touch sending shivers up her arm. "I need you to understand something," Kaio said, once they were alone again. "I'm not good at this, at emotions, at vulnerability. I've never had to be, but I want to try. For you, for our child." Our child. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. "I'm scared," Alexia admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not just of the pregnancy, but of everything. My career, my independence, my heart." "I would never ask you to give up your career," Kaio said firmly. "You're brilliant at what you do. I've read your market analyses. They're innovative, insightful. That's part of what drew me to you that night. The way your mind works, the way you see patterns others miss. But the company will adapt. I'm not just on the board. I'm the majority shareholder. If anyone has an issue with our situation, they can take it up with me." "That's exactly what I'm afraid of," Alexia said, pulling her hand back. "I don't want to be seen as someone who slept her way to protection. I've worked too hard to build my reputation." Kaio's expression softened. "Then we do this your way. We keep things private for now. I'll make sure the merger transition team has no direct overlap with your department. You keep doing your job exactly as you have been." "And us? What are we?" "We're—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "We're two people who shared something profound, who are about to share something even more profound. I don't want to put labels on this, Alexia. I want to get to know you, really know you. Not just as the mother of my child, but as the woman who made me feel something I thought I'd buried decades ago." Tears pricked at Alexia's eyes. Damn pregnancy hormones. "And what was that?" "Hope," he said simply. "Hope that maybe there's more to life than boardrooms and balance sheets, that maybe real connection isn't a weakness after all." A soft breeze drifted in through the partially open window, carrying the scent of jasmine from the garden below. In that moment, looking into Kaio's silver eyes, Alexia felt something shift inside her. The walls she'd built so carefully began to crack, letting in something warm and dangerous and thrilling. "I have conditions," she said, straightening her spine. A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "I would expect nothing less from you, Miss Monroe." "Name them." "First, we take this slow. The pregnancy doesn't mean we have to rush everything else." He nodded. "Agreed. Second, I keep my apartment, my independence, no matter what happens between us." "Of course." "And third," she took a deep breath, "you have to be real with me. Always. No corporate masks, no power plays, just you." Kaio was quiet for a long moment, his silver eyes intense. "That last one, it won't be easy for me. Being vulnerable doesn't come naturally. I know. It's not easy for me either." Alexia reached across the table, taking his hand this time. "But I think that's what makes this worth trying. We both understand the cost of letting those walls down." He interlaced his fingers with hers, and the simple gesture felt more intimate than any kiss. "Then we learned together, day by day." As they left the restaurant later that night, the Atlanta streets quiet and star-filled, Kaio helped her into a waiting car. But before he closed the door, he hesitated. "Alexia." "Yes?" "Thank you. For giving me a chance to be more than what everyone expects me to be." She smiled, feeling lighter than she had in weeks. "Thank you for seeing me, really seeing me, when I was trying so hard to be invisible." The car pulled away, leaving Kaio standing in the soft streetlight. In her rearview mirror, Alexia watched his tall figure grow smaller, but she could still feel the warmth of his hand in hers, the echo of his words in her heart. Neither of them had said the word love. It was too soon, too fragile for such declarations, but as Alexia placed a hand on her still flat stomach, she felt a certainty she couldn't explain. Whatever was growing between them, both literally and figuratively, had the potential to be something extraordinary. All they had to do was be brave enough to let it happen. The morning light filtered through the windows of Atlanta Women's Health Center as Alexia sat in the waiting room, her fingers nervously smoothing non-existent wrinkles from her navy dress. The door chimed, and her heart skipped as Kaio walked in, somehow managing to make even this ordinary medical office feel like an executive boardroom in his perfectly tailored grey suit. Several heads turned, but he had eyes only for her. "Am I late?" he asked softly, taking the seat beside her. "No, right on time." She couldn't help but notice how he angled his body toward her, creating an intimate bubble in the public space. "You didn't have to leave your morning meetings." "Stop," he said gently. "There's nowhere else I need to be right now." Before she could respond, a nurse called her name. As they followed her down the corridor, Kaio's hand found the small of Alexia's back, a gesture so natural, yet so profound, it made her breath catch. The examination room was standard-issue medical, all cool whites and sterile equipment, but somehow Kaio's presence made it feel different. He stood slightly apart as the nurse took Alexia's vitals, but his silver eyes never left her face. Dr. Lauren Miller entered with a warm smile, her salt and pepper hair pulled back in a neat bun. "Alexia Monroe?" She glanced between them, professional enough not to react to Kaio's obvious corporate status. "And you must be the father?" "Kaio Wolf," he said simply, moving closer to Alexia's side. The next 30 minutes were a blur of questions, examinations, and explanations. But what Alexia would remember most clearly was Kaio's face when the doctor turned on the ultrasound machine and a rapid whooshing filled the room. "That's your baby's heartbeat," Dr. Miller said, moving the wand slightly. "Strong and steady, right where we want it to be at 8 weeks. Alexia felt tears slip down her cheeks as she stared at the tiny flickering light on the screen. Then she felt Kaio's hand close around hers, and when she looked up, she saw something she never expected. Moisture in those steel-gray eyes. "Would you like a picture?" Dr. Miller asked, already printing several copies. "Yes," they said in unison, then shared a look that made the doctor smile knowingly. Later, in the parking lot, Kaio helped Alexia into his car despite her protests that she could drive herself. "You're coming to my place," he said, his tone brooking no argument. "We need to talk about the care instructions Dr. Miller gave us, and I had my chef prepare lunch." "You have a chef? For special occasions?" He glanced at her as he navigated through midday traffic. "This qualifies." His penthouse in Buckhead took up the entire top floor of a sleek high-rise, but what struck Alexia wasn't the obvious luxury. It was how unlived-in it felt, like a perfect stage set, waiting for real life to begin. "The kitchen's through here," Kaio said, leading her past modern art pieces that probably cost more than her annual salary. The kitchen, however, was warm and inviting, with copper pots hanging from a rack and sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. A small table was set for two, laden with what looked like a gourmet version of comfort food: golden chicken soup, fresh bread, and a colorful salad. "You told your chef I've been having trouble keeping food down," Alexia realized, touched by the thoughtfulness. "I did some research," he admitted, pulling out her chair. "Apparently clear broths and simple proteins are best for morning sickness, though in your case it's more afternoon sickness." They ate in comfortable silence for a while, the Atlanta skyline spreading out before them. Finally, Kaio spoke. "Move in with me." Alexia nearly choked on her soup. "What?" "Not immediately," he clarified quickly, "but soon. This place has 5 bedrooms. A proper nursery could be set up, and you'd be closer to the office." "Kaio," she interrupted gently, "we talked about this. Taking things slow, remember? Maintaining my independence." He ran a hand through his dark hair, a gesture she was beginning to recognize as a sign of genuine emotion breaking through his controlled exterior. "I know, I want to be there. For everything. Every morning of sickness, every craving, every moment. And you can be," she said softly. "But not by rushing into living together. We barely know each other outside of work, and that night, then let me know you." He reached across the table, taking her hand. "Have dinner with me again, not at a restaurant. Here, I'll cook." "You cook?" A smile tugged at his lips. "There's a lot you don't know about me, Alexia Monroe. My mother might have been emotionally distant, but our housekeeper, Rosa, practically raised me. She taught me that food is love in its purest form." The simple admission, this glimpse into his childhood, moved her more than any grand gesture could have. "Okay," she said. "Dinner. But not tonight. I promised Olivia I'd fill her in on the appointment." "Ah yes, the protective best friend." His tone was amused. "Should I be worried?" "Probably," Alexia laughed. "She's already planning ways to make your life miserable if you hurt me." "Smart woman." His expression grew serious. "I don't intend to hurt you, Alexia." "I know," she said softly, "but intentions aren't always enough." They stood at his door later, neither quite ready to say goodbye. Kaio reached out, tucking a stray curl behind her ear. The gesture was so tender it made her heart ache. "Tomorrow night?" he asked. "For dinner?" "Tomorrow night," she agreed. Back at her own apartment, Alexia found Olivia waiting with takeout and demanding eyes. Spill everything. Now. Over pad thai and spring rolls, Alexia recounted the appointment, then pulled out the ultrasound picture. Olivia squealed appropriately, then grew serious. And Kaio? How's he handling all this? Surprisingly well, almost too well. Alexia picked at her food. He asked me to move in with him. Whoa! Olivia sat up straighter. That's fast. I said no. We agreed to take things slow. But, Alexia sighed. There are moments when he looks at me, or touches me, and it feels like the most natural thing in the world, like we've known each other forever, instead of weeks. That's called chemistry, honey. Olivia took a sip of her tea. The question is, are you ready to risk your heart on it? I think, Alexia said slowly, I think it might be too late to protect my heart. Not with the baby, and not with him. The next day at work was a study in careful distance. They passed each other in the hallway once. Kaio in full corporate mode, surrounded by executives, Alexia heading to a team meeting. Their eyes met briefly, and the electricity between them was almost visible. That evening, as Alexia stood in front of her closet, trying to decide what to wear for dinner, her phone buzzed with a text from Kaio. Wear something comfortable. No corporate armor tonight. Just us. The message made her smile. She chose a soft sweater dress in deep purple, leaving her curls free around her shoulders. When she arrived at his penthouse, the scent of garlic and herbs filled the air, and Kaio greeted her in jeans and a black Henley, barefoot on the hardwood floors. The sight of him so casual, so unguarded, did something to her insides that had nothing to do with pregnancy hormones. Hi, she said softly. Hi, he replied, drawing her inside. Welcome to cooking lesson number 1. I'm cooking. We're cooking. Together. He led her to the kitchen where ingredients were laid out like artwork. Rosa always said that cooking together is the best way to learn someone's rhythm. As they chopped and stirred and tasted, moving around each other in the large kitchen, Alexia understood what he meant. It was like a dance, this give and take, this learning of each other's spaces and movements. When Kaio reached around her to adjust the heat on a pan, his chest pressing against her back, she felt the now familiar spark between them ignite. But this time, instead of pulling away, she leaned into it slightly. His breath caught, and his free hand settled on her hip. Alexia, he murmured, his lips close to her ear. The sauce is going to burn, she whispered back. He chuckled, the sound rich and warm, but moved away to stir the pan. The moment stretched between them, full of promise and possibility. Later, as they ate the pasta they'd created together, Alexia realized something important. They were learning each other, slowly but surely, in all the ways that mattered. Not through grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but through small moments. The way he remembered her tea preference, the way she could read his micro-expressions, the way they moved together in the kitchen like they'd been doing it for years. Maybe that was what real love looked like. Not a sudden explosion, but a careful building of trust and understanding, brick by brick, moment by moment. 3 weeks had passed since their first cooking lesson, and Alexia found herself settling into a new rhythm with Kaio. Their private moments were filled with quiet intimacy, dinners at his penthouse, weekend brunches, long conversations about everything and nothing. But at work, they maintained their careful distance, a dance of professional detachment that was becoming increasingly difficult to maintain. That morning, however, everything changed. Alexia sat in her morning team meeting, trying to focus on quarterly projections while fighting another wave of nausea, when her phone buzzed with an incoming email. The subject line made her blood run cold. Wolf airs secret romance with junior analyst. Her hands trembling, she opened the email to find a link to a gossip blog. There, in high-resolution detail, were photos of her and Kaio, entering his building, sharing intimate dinners by his penthouse windows, even one of him helping her into his car after the doctor's appointment. The article was filled with speculation about their relationship, her role in the company, and thinly veiled implications about how she'd advanced her career. Alexia, her manager's voice cut through her panic. Are you okay? You look pale. I'm fine, she managed, but her voice sounded distant to her own ears. Just need some air. She barely made it to the bathroom before emptying her stomach. As she sat on the cool tile floor, her phone buzzed again, this time with a text from Olivia. My office now, back entrance. Somehow she made it to Olivia's corner office in the marketing department without being seen. Her friend was waiting with ginger tea and a fierce expression. Have you seen it? Alexia asked, collapsing onto Olivia's couch. Yes, PR is already in damage control mode. Olivia sat beside her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. But honey, that's not what I'm worried about. How are you? Alexia's voice broke. Everything was just starting to feel real. Good. And now, a knock at the door made them both jump. But it was only Kaio's executive assistant, Madison. Ms. Monroe? Mr. Wolf needs to see you immediately in the executive conference room. Madison's expression was sympathetic. There's a private elevator access to avoid the main office areas. The executive floor was eerily quiet when Alexia arrived. Through the glass walls of the conference room, she could see Kaio standing with several men in expensive suits. Members of the board, she realized, with a sinking feeling. Kaio's face was a mask of corporate control, but his eyes softened slightly when he saw her. Alexia, please come in. The board members studied her with varying degrees of judgment and curiosity. William Harrison, the eldest board member, spoke first. Ms. Monroe, I trust you understand the delicacy of this situation. With all due respect, Kaio interrupted, his voice carrying that quiet authority that could silence a room. This meeting isn't about judgment. It's about strategy. Strategy? Harrison's eyebrows rose. Kaio, you're the face of this company. Your relationship with a junior employee. My relationship, Kaio cut in, each word precise and sharp, is not up for discussion. What is up for discussion is how we're going to handle the clear breach of privacy that occurred. The optics, another board member began. The optics, Kaio's voice dropped dangerously, are that someone had me followed, had photos taken through my private windows, invaded not just my privacy, but that of someone I care about, someone carrying my child. The room went deadly silent. Alexia's heart thundered in her chest as she watched the board members process this new information. You're pregnant? Harrison asked, looking at Alexia directly for the first time. Yes. She lifted her chin, channeling some of Kaio's quiet strength. 12 weeks. This changes everything, one of the younger board members muttered. No, Kaio said firmly. This changes nothing about her capabilities, her contributions to this company, or her right to privacy. He moved to stand beside Alexia, not quite touching her but close enough that she could feel his protective energy. What it does change is how aggressively we're going to pursue whoever leaked those photos. The next hour was a blur of legal discussions and PR strategies. Through it all, Kaio remained a steady presence beside her, his occasional glances carrying messages only she could read. Are you okay? I'm here. We'll get through this. Finally, when the last board member had left, Kaio closed the conference room door and turned to her. In an instant, his corporate mask crumbled. I'm so sorry, he said softly, pulling her into his arms. I should have been more careful, should have known we were being watched. Alexia buried her face in his chest, breathing in his familiar scent. What happens now? Now, he pulled back slightly to look at her. We stop hiding. Not because they forced our hand, but because I'm tired of pretending I don't light up every time you walk into a room. Kaio, listen to me. He cupped her face in his hands. I know this isn't how we plan to handle things. I know you wanted to keep your professional reputation separate from us, but maybe this is an opportunity. An opportunity for what? To be honest, about everything. His silver eyes were intense. Move in with me, Alexia. Not because of the publicity, not because of the baby, but because I can't stand watching you leave every night, because my place doesn't feel like home until you're in it. People will talk, she whispered. They'll say, let them talk. He brushed his thumb across her cheek. They'll see what I see eventually. A brilliant woman who challenges me, who makes me better, who's carrying our child and still running circles around her department's projections. A knock at the door interrupted them. Madison entered with a concerned expression. Sir, your mother is on line 1 and she's not happy. Kaio's jaw tightened. Tell her I'll call her back. She says she's getting on a plane. She and your father will be here by tonight. Alexia felt Kaio tense beside her. In all their conversations about family, he'd never gone into detail about his relationship with his parents, but his reaction now told her everything she needed to know. Book them a hotel, he said firmly. Not my penthouse. After Madison left, Alexia touched his arm gently. Do you want me to be there? When they arrive? No, he said quickly, then softened. Not yet. Let me handle them first. They're complicated. You mean they won't approve? Their approval stopped mattering to me a long time ago. He pulled her close again. But I won't let them upset you. Not in your condition. I'm pregnant, not fragile, she reminded him, but smiled at his protectiveness. I know, you're the strongest person I know. He pressed a kiss to her forehead. Go home. Pack what you need for tonight. Stay with me. Caio, just for tonight, he added quickly. We can figure out the rest later. But after today, I need you close. Looking into his eyes, Alexia saw what he wasn't saying. His fear of losing her, his need to protect her, his growing feelings that neither of them had put into words yet. Okay, she said softly. Tonight. Later, as she packed an overnight bag in her apartment, Olivia perched on her bed offering commentary. You know, this changes everything, right? Everything was already changing, Alexia replied, folding a sweater. This just accelerated things. Are you ready for that? For his world? His family? Alexia paused, thinking about the look in Caio's eyes when he'd defended her to the board. I'm ready to try. For him. For us. Olivia studied her friend's face, then smiled. You're in love with him, aren't you? Alexia touched her slightly rounded stomach. I think I might be. Good, Olivia said firmly. Because that man is definitely in love with you. Has been since that first night, if you ask me. As thunder rolled in the distance, promising an Atlanta summer storm, Alexia looked out her window at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Caio was preparing to face his parents, to defend their relationship, to fight for what was growing between them. She placed a hand on her stomach, feeling the first flutter of movement, too early to be the baby, but something else. Hope, maybe, or courage. Whatever storms were coming, they would face them together. Thunder crashed outside the floor-to-ceiling windows of Caio's penthouse as Alexia curled up on his leather couch, watching Atlanta disappear behind sheets of rain. She'd changed into one of his soft sweaters, the expensive cashmere falling nearly to her knees, making her feel both protected and somehow more vulnerable. The door opened, and Caio strode in, his hair damp from the rain, his expression stormy. He stopped when he saw her, something in his face softening. You're still here, he said quietly, as if he'd half expected her to vanish. Of course I am. She stood, studying his tense features. How did it go with your parents? He loosened his tie with sharp movements. About as well as expected. They're displeased. Displeased enough to take another meeting at 9 p.m.? She gestured to his suit. That wasn't a meeting. His jaw tightened. That was my mother attempting to arrange a marriage with the daughter of her oldest friend. Apparently the timing is perfect given the current scandal. Alexia felt her heart constrict. Oh, hey? He crossed the room in 3 long strides, taking her face in his hands. Look at me. That's not happening. Ever. Your parents clearly have expectations. Their expectations stopped mattering the moment I met you. His silver eyes were fierce. Do you want to know what I told them? She nodded, unable to look away from his intense gaze. I told them that for the first time in my life, I understand what it means to want something, someone, for reasons that have nothing to do with business or legacy or social standing. His thumbs traced her cheekbones. I told them that you challenge me, surprise me, make me question everything I thought I knew about myself, that you're brilliant and beautiful and carrying our child, and if they can't accept that, they can stay in New York. Tears spilled down Alexia's cheeks. Damn pregnancy hormones. What did they say? My father stormed out. My mother... A ghost of a smile touched his lips. My mother actually looked at me. Really looked at me. Maybe for the first time since I was a child. And she asked to meet you. What? Alexia stepped back, panic rising. No, Caio, I can't. Yes, you can. He caught her hands. Because you're stronger than you know. Because I'll be right there with you. And because, he took a deep breath, because I love you. The words hung in the air between them, raw and real and impossible to take back. Alexia's heart thundered in her chest. You don't have to say it back, he added quickly. I know it's fast, and with everything happening, she silenced him with a kiss, rising on her tiptoes to press her lips to his. He responded immediately, wrapping his arms around her waist and pulling her close, deepening the kiss until they were both breathless. I love you too, she whispered against his mouth. I think I have since that night in the hotel, when you looked at me like you could see straight through every wall I'd ever built. He rested his forehead against hers, their breath mingling. Stay with me tonight? I'm already wearing your sweater, she pointed out with a small smile. I mean stay, not just tonight. His voice was rough with emotion. Move in with me, Alexia. Let me wake up to you every morning. Let me take care of you and our baby. Let me love you the way you deserve to be loved. Before she could respond, a sharp knock at the door made them both tense. Caio's expression darkened as he checked his phone. It's my mother. She's early. He looked at Alexia. You don't have to do this now. Yes, I do. She squared her shoulders, though she kept his sweater on like armor. Let her in. Eleanor Wolfe was everything Alexia had imagined, and nothing she expected. Tall and elegant in a designer suit, her silver-streaked dark hair swept into a perfect chignon, she carried herself with the same natural authority as her son. But there was something else in her grey eyes, something almost vulnerable as she looked between Caio and Alexia. So, Eleanor said after a long moment, you're the woman who's made my son forget everything we taught him about suitable matches. Mother, Caio's voice held a warning. Let me finish, Caio. Eleanor moved further into the room, her heels clicking on the hardwood floors. You're the woman who made him stand up to the board today, who made him tell me for the first time in his adult life that his happiness matters more than the family legacy. She stopped in front of Alexia. You're carrying my grandchild? Yes, Alexia said, lifting her chin. I am. And do you love my son? Not his name, not his position, not his money. Mother, that's enough. I love him, Alexia interrupted, her voice steady. I love the way he makes coffee in the morning. Too strong and with too much sugar. I love how he can silence a room with just his presence, but gets nervous when he has to cook something new. I love that he's learning to be vulnerable, to let someone in, even though it terrifies him. She took a deep breath. I love him for who he is, Mrs. Wolfe, not what he owns, and I'm not asking for your approval, but I hope someday you'll understand that your son deserves to be loved for himself, not for his legacy. Eleanor was silent for a long moment, studying Alexia with those penetrating grey eyes, so like her son's. Then, to both Alexia and Caio's shock, she smiled. Well, she said softly, perhaps I was wrong about suitable matches. She turned to Caio. Your father will take longer to convince. But for what it's worth, I think you've found something rare, my son. Don't let anyone take it from you, not even us. After Eleanor left, Caio pulled Alexia into his arms, burying his face in her curls. I've never seen my mother back down like that, not once in my entire life. Maybe she just needed to see that you could be happy without following their plan. Maybe. He pulled back to look at her. You were incredible, you know that? Standing up to her, defending us. I meant every word. She touched his face gently. And yes, I'll move in with you. She smiled at his surprised expression. You're right. It's time to stop hiding. From your family, from the press, from our feelings. I love you, Caio Wolfe, and I'm tired of pretending I don't want to fall asleep in your arms every night. His kiss was fierce and tender all at once, full of promises and possibilities. When they finally broke apart, the storm outside had passed, leaving the Atlanta skyline glittering like stars. I should warn you, Caio said, his silver eyes dancing with unexpected humor. I'm terrible at sharing closet space. Alexia laughed, the sound bright and free. Good thing you have 5 bedrooms worth of closets then. As they stood together looking out at the city, Alexia felt their baby flutter. A real movement this time, tiny but unmistakable. She guided Caio's hand to the spot, watching his face transform with wonder. I feel it, he whispered, or replacing his usual corporate control. That's our baby. Our baby, she echoed, leaning into him. Our home, our life, our love story, he added softly. Not the one anyone expected, but the one we chose. Outside, the last rumbles of thunder faded away, leaving behind a sky washed clean and new. Like their love, Alexia thought. Unexpected, powerful, and all the more beautiful for having weathered its first storm. Morning light painted golden streaks across Caio's, their bedroom, as Alexia stood in front of the floor-length mirror, studying her reflection. At 16 weeks pregnant, her bump was becoming unmistakable, straining slightly against the fabric of her cream silk blouse. You're beautiful, Caio's voice came from the doorway. He was already dressed for the office in a charcoal suit, but his eyes were soft as he watched her. I'm not sure any of my work clothes will fit much longer, she sighed, smoothing the fabric. Then we'll get you new ones. He crossed the room, wrapping his arms around her from behind, his hands resting on her growing belly. Or you could just wear my sweaters forever. I'm quite fond of that look. She laughed, leaning back against his chest. The past month of living together had revealed new sides of Caio. Tender moments like this when his corporate mask fell away completely, showing the man who loved to hold her while they slept, who talked to their baby in the evenings, who seemed to find endless excuses to touch her. But it had also brought new challenges. The board meeting is today, she reminded him, tension creeping back into her shoulders. I know. His reflection met hers in the mirror. And you're going to be brilliant, just like you always are. Since the news of their relationship had broken, Alexia had insisted on maintaining her professional independence. Today would be her first major presentation to the board since moving in with Kaio, a comprehensive analysis of market trends that could reshape their entire Southeast strategy. What if they only see me as your pregnant girlfriend? The fear that had been gnawing at her finally surfaced. What if everything I've worked for? Stop. Kaio turned her gently to face him. You earned this presentation. Your analysis is revolutionary. That's why you're presenting it, not your team lead. The board needs to hear this directly from the person who saw the patterns everyone else missed. A knock at their bedroom door interrupted them. Mr. Wolf, the car is ready, Madison called out. We'll take separate cars, Alexia said firmly. At Kaio's slight frown, she added, Please, I need to do this my way. He nodded, understanding in his silver eyes. I love you, he said softly, kissing her forehead. Show them what you showed me in Chicago, that quiet brilliance that changes everything. An hour later, Alexia stood in the women's restroom at the office, fighting morning sickness that had decided to make an afternoon appearance. The door opened, and Olivia rushed in. I brought crackers and ginger tea, her friend announced, pulling supplies from her designer bag. And backup makeup in case you need touch-ups before the presentation. You're a lifesaver. Alexia accepted the tea gratefully. How did you know? Please, you think I haven't memorized your nausea schedule? Olivia hopped onto the counter, studying her friend. Plus, Madison texted me. Kaio's assistant is reporting to you now. We have a deal. I keep her updated on your lunch breaks. She keeps me posted on your morning sickness. We're like your personal protection squad. Olivia's expression softened. He really loves you, you know. The whole office sees it. The way his eyes follow you in meetings. How he has to stop himself from reaching for you in the hallways. I know. Alexia smiled, remembering how she'd woken up that morning to find Kaio had already prepared her tea and crackers, leaving them on her nightstand with a note, Conquer them all today, my love. Then, stop worrying about the board seeing you as just his girlfriend. Show them why he fell in love with you in the first place, that fierce intelligence that doesn't back down. Strengthened by Olivia's words and the settling effects of the tea, Alexia made her way to the boardroom. She passed Kaio in the hallway, a professional nod their only acknowledgement, though his eyes held volumes of love and pride. The presentation started smoothly. Alexia moved through her analysis with practiced precision, her voice steady as she outlined the market shifts she'd identified. But when she reached her most controversial conclusion, that they needed to completely restructure their approach to millennial investors, she saw several board members shift uncomfortably. Ms. Monroe, Harrison interrupted, while your analysis is interesting, it contradicts decades of established investment patterns. With respect, Mr. Harrison, that's exactly my point. Alexia met his gaze steadily. We're using outdated models to predict the behavior of a generation that operates fundamentally differently than their predecessors. And you believe you understand this generation better than our experienced analysts? I believe the data speaks for itself. She pulled up a new slide, displaying complex pattern analysis. These trends aren't theoretical. They're happening right now, under our noses. If we don't adapt, we'll lose an entire generation of potential clients. She's right. Kaio's voice was quiet, but carried authority. Look at the probability matrices on page 7. The pattern correlation is undeniable. Of course you'd support her analysis, another board member muttered. The room went silent. Alexia felt heat rise to her cheeks, but before she could respond, an unexpected voice spoke up. I've reviewed Ms. Monroe's work extensively, Eleanor Wolf said from the doorway. Everyone turned, surprised to see Kaio's mother at an Atlanta board meeting. Her methodology is impeccable, her conclusions backed by solid data. If you're dismissing her analysis because of her personal life, you're doing this company a grave disservice. Eleanor moved into the room, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. I flew down specifically to discuss this presentation, because what Ms. Monroe has identified could revolutionize our entire approach to modern investors. She fixed Harrison with a steely gaze. Unless, of course, you're comfortable watching our millennial client base migrate to more adaptive firms. The next hour was intense but productive. With Eleanor's support, Alexia's recommendations were given serious consideration. By the end, even Harrison was grudgingly acknowledging the validity of her analysis. After the meeting, Eleanor caught Alexia's arm. Walk with me. They ended up in the executive lounge where Eleanor ordered tea for both of them. Ginger, she specified to the server, My daughter-in-law needs it for the baby. Alexia's eyes widened at the term. Eleanor smiled slightly. Is that not accurate? We haven't... That is, Caio hasn't... He will. Eleanor's expression softened. I know, my son. The way he looks at you, I've never seen him so sure of anything. She paused, stirring her tea. I owe you an apology, Alexia. I judged you unfairly at first. You were protecting your son. No, I was protecting an idea of him, the heir we'd molded since childhood. But watching you today, seeing how you stand your ground, how you fight for what you believe in... Eleanor reached across the table, squeezing Alexia's hand. You make him better. Not just happier, but better. As a leader, as a man, as the father he's about to become. Tears pricked at Alexia's eyes. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me yet, Eleanor said with a hint of mischief. Wait until I start insisting on planning the wedding. Later that evening, as Alexia recounted the conversation to Caio, she found herself studying his face. He was lounging on their bed, his suit replaced by soft loungewear, reading glasses perched on his nose as he reviewed documents. Your mother called me her daughter-in-law, she said carefully. Caio set down his papers, removing his glasses. Is that something you'd want? To be my wife? Are you asking? Not yet. He pulled her close, his hand finding its usual place on her bump. When I do, it won't be because of the baby, or my mother, or anything else. It will be because I want to spend my life loving you, challenging you, growing with you. He kissed her softly. But yes, Alexia Monroe, one day soon, I'm going to ask you to marry me, and I hope you'll say yes. She curled into him, feeling their baby move as if in response to their conversation. I will, she whispered. When you ask, I will. Outside their window, Atlanta glittered in the darkness, a constellation of lights matching the joy sparkling in their hearts. They had faced their first major challenges, family expectations, professional scrutiny, personal doubts, and emerged stronger. Together they were writing a new story, one where love and career, passion and professionalism could coexist and flourish. And somewhere in the city, Olivia was probably already planning what to wear to the wedding she knew would come, while Eleanor Wolfe sat in her hotel suite, smiling as she looked at nursery design magazines, both women already part of the unexpected but beautiful family Alexia and Caio were building. One truth, one challenge, one love-filled day at a time. At 20 weeks pregnant, Alexia had grown accustomed to the changes in her body, the way her growing bump seemed to lead her into every room. What she wasn't prepared for was the wave of dizziness that hit her during a routine morning meeting. Alexia, her team leader's voice seemed to come from far away. Are you all right? She tried to stand to assure everyone she was fine, but the room tilted dangerously. The last thing she heard was someone calling her name before everything went black. She woke to bright hospital lights and the steady beep of monitors. Caio sat beside her bed, his usually perfect hair disheveled, his tie loose around his neck. When he saw her eyes open, the relief on his face was palpable. Don't ever scare me like that again, he whispered, taking her hand. The baby. Her free hand flew to her stomach. Is fine, a new voice assured her. Dr. Miller stepped into view, chart in hand. But you, Ms. Monroe, are severely anemic. Your blood pressure is also concerning. We need to discuss reducing your workload. No, Alexia said immediately. I have the merger transition to oversee, the new market strategy implementation. Alexia. Caio's voice was gentle but firm. Nothing is more important than your health and our babies. Your partner is right, Dr. Miller added. I'm recommending bed rest for at least 2 weeks, then we'll reassess. Your body is telling you to slow down. You need to listen. After the doctor left, Alexia turned to Caio, tears threatening. I can't just stop working. The board finally started taking me seriously, and now they'll respect you for taking care of yourself and our child. He brushed a curl from her face. I've already spoken to HR. You can work remotely, delegate the in-person meetings. Madison will coordinate everything. You're handling this very calmly, she observed, studying his face. A muscle ticked in his jaw. Calm is not what I'm feeling. When they called me when I saw you unconscious, he closed his eyes briefly. I have never been more terrified in my life. The raw emotion in his voice made her heart ache. I'm sorry, she whispered. Don't apologize. He pressed his forehead to hers. Just let me take care of you, both of you. Later that evening, settled back in their penthouse, Alexia watched Caio transform their living room into a comfortable workspace. He'd arranged for a reclining desk setup, positioned so she could see both her laptop and the Atlanta skyline. "Olivia's coming over tomorrow to help you organize your remote workflow," he said, adjusting a pillow behind her back. "And my mother, well, she's insisting on flying down again. She doesn't have to." "Try telling her that," he smiled slightly. "She's already ordered every pregnancy pillow on the market and hired a professional chef to prepare nutrient-rich meals. Your mother is becoming surprisingly maternal. I think she's making up for lost time." Kaio sat beside her, his hand finding its usual place on her bump. "With me, with us, with the baby." Speaking of which, he reached into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. Alexia's heart stopped. "Kaio, this isn't because of today," he said quickly. "I've had this for weeks, waiting for the perfect moment. But today made me realize something. There is no perfect moment. There's just us loving each other, facing whatever comes our way together." He opened the box, revealing a stunning emerald-cut diamond ring with delicate sapphire accents. "I love you, Alexia Monroe. Your strength, your brilliance, your heart. Marry me." Through tears, she nodded. "Yes, of course, yes." The ring slid perfectly onto her finger, catching the evening light. As Kaio kissed her, their baby kicked, a strong movement they both felt. "Someone approves." Alexia laughed softly. The next few days settled into a new rhythm. Alexia worked from her comfortable setup, connected to the office through video calls and shared documents. Olivia became a constant presence, bringing work updates, gossip, and much-needed laughter. But on the fourth day, something changed. Alexia woke to sharp pains in her abdomen. Kaio was already at the office for an early meeting, and panic clawed at her throat as she reached for her phone. "Kaio!" she gasped when he answered. "Something's wrong." She had never heard him move so fast. Within 15 minutes, he was bursting through their door, already on the phone with Dr. Miller. Everything after that became a blur of ambulance lights and hospital corridors. "The baby is under stress," Dr. Miller explained after examining her. "Your blood pressure has spiked dangerously. We need to get it under control immediately." Hours passed in a haze of medications and monitoring. Kaio never left her side, his usual corporate control completely abandoned. As he held her hand, whispered prayers, made calls to postpone meetings without a second thought. Olivia arrived with an overnight bag and tears in her eyes. "I've got your comfortable clothes, your Kindle, everything you need. Just stay strong, okay?" Eleanor appeared next, her usual elegance softened by genuine concern. She took one look at her son's haunted face and took charge. "Kaio, go get some air," she commanded gently. "I'll sit with Alexia." Once they were alone, Eleanor took Alexia's hand. "You know, when I was pregnant with Kaio, I had similar complications." "You did?" "Mm-hmm. I was so focused on proving I could do everything. Be the perfect lawyer, the perfect wife, handle every case and client. My body finally rebelled." She squeezed Alexia's hand. "Want to know what I learned? Please. That sometimes the strongest thing we can do is let others be strong for us." Eleanor's eyes were soft. "My son loves you more than anything in this world. Let him take care of you. Let all of us help." When Kaio returned, some of the wild fear had left his eyes, replaced by determined focus. He sat beside Alexia's bed, pulling out his tablet. "I've restructured my entire schedule," he said. "Delegated most of my direct responsibilities to the senior team. For the next month, I'm working primarily from home." "Kaio, you can't." "Yes, I can." His voice was firm. "I built this company to run without me having to control every detail. It's time I proved that." He took her hand, touching her engagement ring. "You and our baby are my priority. Everything else can wait." Dr. Miller's evening update brought cautious good news. The medications were working, the baby's vitals improving. But she was clear. Alexia would need to remain in the hospital for at least a week, then face extended bed rest at home. That night, as monitors beeped softly and Atlanta's lights twinkled beyond the hospital windows, Alexia watched Kaio sleeping uncomfortably in the chair beside her bed. His hand hadn't left hers for hours, as if he could keep her safe through sheer force of will. She thought about Eleanor's words, about strength and surrender, about how love sometimes means letting go of control, letting others carry you when you can't walk alone. Their baby moved, gentler now, more settled. Alexia placed her free hand on her bump, sending silent promises. She would learn to rest, to accept help, to let love guide her instead of pride. Tomorrow she would start delegating more work. She would let Eleanor fuss over her, let Olivia distract her with magazines and gossip, let Kaio work from her hospital room despite her protests. Because that's what family does. The family they were building, unexpected and beautiful and stronger than any corporate empire. Outside, a gentle rain began to fall, washing away the day's fears, promising new beginnings. In the quiet hospital room, surrounded by machines and love, Alexia finally understood what real strength meant, not standing alone but standing together, holding on through every storm. At 28 weeks pregnant, Alexia sat in what had become her favorite spot in the penthouse, a custom-designed reading nook overlooking Atlanta, surrounded by cushions and flooded with natural light. The past 2 months had taught her the art of stillness, of accepting help, of finding peace in the quiet moments. Kayo had transformed their home office into a serene workspace where she could manage her reduced workload while maintaining the doctor-mandated rest. He'd kept his word about working primarily from home, running most meetings virtually, his protective instincts now balanced with understanding that she needed some independence. More tea? Eleanor's voice broke through her thoughts. Kayo's mother had practically moved into the guest suite, her corporate responsibilities in New York managed remotely, just like her son's. "Thank you," Alexia said, accepting the cup of pregnancy-safe herbal blend. "You don't have to keep taking care of me, you know." "Nonsense." Eleanor settled into the adjacent armchair, her own tea in hand. "Besides, I'm not just here for you. I'm here because my son finally learned to need someone, to love someone more than success. I'm not missing a moment of that miracle." A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by the subtle movements of Alexia's active baby boy. They'd learned the gender at last week's checkup, though they were keeping it private for now. The peace was interrupted by Kayo's raised voice from his study. Even through the closed door, his tension was evident. "Everything okay?" Alexia asked when he emerged, his silver eyes stormy. "My father's coming to Atlanta." Kayo ran a hand through his hair, his tell for genuine distress. "He's calling an emergency board meeting. Apparently my reduced schedule and delegation of responsibilities have made some members concerned about my commitment to the company." Eleanor set down her tea with a sharp click. "Richard wouldn't dare." "He would, Mother. You know he would." Kayo moved to Alexia's side, his hand automatically finding her bump. "He's never forgiven me for choosing my own path, for building the consulting division instead of joining the law firm. Now he's using my focus on family as proof that he was right." "When?" Alexia asked quietly. "Tomorrow morning." He knelt beside her chair, his eyes intense. "I don't want you anywhere near this. The stress is less dangerous than me sitting here wondering what's happening." She touched his face gently. "I'm stable now, Kayo. Dr. Miller said short trips are fine as long as I'm careful." "Alexia's right," Eleanor interjected. "In fact, her presence might be exactly what the board needs to see." "What do you mean?" "They're questioning your commitment. Show them what real commitment looks like, to your company and your family." Eleanor's eyes gleamed with strategy. "Let them see the man who can run an empire from home, because his priorities are finally in the right order." The next morning, Alexia entered the boardroom on Kayo's arm, her growing bump elegant in a dove-grey maternity dress. She felt the stares, heard the whispers, but kept her head high. Richard Wolfe stood at the head of the table, his silver hair and commanding presence leaving no doubt about his relation to Kayo. His eyes narrowed at their entrance. "This is a closed board meeting," he said coldly. "Family observers are not—" "Ms. Monroe is not an observer," Harrison interrupted, surprising everyone. "She's still head of market strategy, and her latest remote implementation plans have increased our millennial investment portfolio by 30%. She has every right to be here." Alexia squeezed Kayo's hand before taking her seat, Eleanor positioning herself protectively on her other side. "Now," Richard continued as if there had been no interruption, "we're here to discuss the concerning shift in leadership focus over the past 2 months. Client meetings delayed, responsibilities delegated, decisions deferred. Decisions executed precisely as they should be," Kayo cut in, his voice carrying that quiet authority Alexia loved. "Every change has been strategic, every delegation carefully planned. Would you like to see the numbers?" He pulled up a holographic display, filling the room with real-time data. "Our efficiency has increased 15% since implementing the new management structure. Employee satisfaction is up, client retention has strengthened, and our adaptive response time to market changes has improved dramatically." "Because you're not micromanaging every decision," Eleanor added. "You've built a strong team, son. Letting them lead isn't weakness. It's exactly what a true CEO should do." "And what happens when the baby comes?" Richard demanded. "When your attention is even more divided?" My attention isn't divided, Father. It's exactly where it needs to be. Kaio's voice softened as he looked at Alexia. Having a family hasn't made me weaker or less committed. It's made me stronger, more efficient, more human. Human doesn't build empires, Richard scoffed. No, Alexia spoke up, her voice clear and steady. But it keeps them from becoming hollow. She met her future father-in-law's gaze. Your son has built something extraordinary here, not just a successful company, but a legacy of balance, of proving that power and love can coexist. That's what will attract the next generation of talent and clients. That's what will make this company last. The room fell silent. Harrison nodded slowly, others following suit. Even Richard seemed temporarily at a loss for words. I move to maintain current operational structures, Harrison said formally. All in favor? The vote was unanimous. Even Richard's hand raised reluctantly after a sharp look from Eleanor. Later that evening, as they celebrated their victory with a quiet dinner at home, Alexia watched Kaio with their closest allies, Eleanor discussing nursery colors, Olivia showing off the tiny business suits she'd bought for the baby, never too early for proper boardroom attire, Madison coordinating their reduced schedule for the coming months. Penny, for your thoughts? Kaio asked softly, noticing her contemplation. I was just thinking about what your father said about empires. She smiled, taking his hand. He was right in a way. Human doesn't build empires, it builds something better, it builds families. Speaking of family, Eleanor interrupted, holding up her tablet. We need to discuss the wedding. I'm thinking a small ceremony before the baby comes. Intimate, elegant, just our closest circle. Mother, Kaio began. Actually, Alexia said slowly, I like that idea. She looked at Kaio. Not because we have to, but because I want to. I want our son to be born into a family that's official in every way, that shows him love comes in all forms, passionate like ours, fierce like Olivia's friendship, unexpected like your mother's acceptance. Kaio's kiss silenced her, earning cheers from their assembled family. When he pulled back, his silver eyes were bright with emotion. 2 weeks, he said. Give us that long to plan something perfect. One condition, Alexia added, looking at Eleanor. No huge society affair. Just us, just love. My dear, Eleanor smiled, taking her hand. That's all I want for you both now. The society pages had their scandal. Let them see your happily ever after, too. Outside, Atlanta's lights began to twinkle on, painting the sky in shades of hope. Alexia leaned into Kaio's embrace, feeling their son move as if dancing to the rhythm of their joy. They had faced every challenge: family disapproval, public scrutiny, health scares, corporate politics, and emerged stronger. Not because they were perfect, but because they were perfectly matched. Two souls who had found each other in the dark and decided to light up each other's worlds. In 2 weeks, they would make it official, but the truth was, they had been building their empire of love since that first night in a wrongly assigned hotel room, when two carefully constructed worlds collided and something extraordinary began. The evening sun painted the Atlanta Botanical Gardens in shades of gold as Alexia stood before a vintage mirror in the garden's historic greenhouse. At 30 weeks pregnant, she wore a custom-designed ivory gown that flowed elegantly over her bump, her dark curls adorned with tiny white flowers. You look absolutely perfect, Olivia declared, adjusting the simple veil. Like some kind of pregnancy goddess. Indeed you do, Eleanor added, her own eyes suspiciously bright. Though we should get you seated soon. No overexerting yourself, even today. The past 2 weeks had been a whirlwind of intimate preparations. True to their wishes, the guest list was small, just their closest family and friends, the people who had supported their unconventional love story from the beginning. 5 minutes, Madison called through the door, ever the efficient coordinator, even on her boss's wedding day. Alexia took a deep breath, one hand resting on her bump where her son was particularly active. He knows something special is happening, she smiled. Of course he does, Olivia grinned. He's got his daddy's perfect timing. A knock at the door revealed a surprise visitor, Richard Wolfe, looking somewhat uncomfortable in his formal attire. May I have a moment with my future daughter-in-law? He asked, uncharacteristically hesitant. Eleanor and Olivia exchanged looks before quietly excusing themselves. Richard stepped into the room, studying Alexia with those familiar silver eyes, so like his son's. I owe you an apology, he said finally. Several, actually. Mr. Wolfe, Richard, please. He moved closer, his corporate mask slipping to reveal something more vulnerable. I spent decades building an empire. convinced that power and success were the only legacy worth leaving. Then you walked into my son's life and showed all of us, what real legacy looks like. Tears threatened to ruin Alexia's careful makeup. I just loved him, she said simply. The real him, not the empire. I know. That's what I never understood before. Richard reached into his pocket, pulling out a small box. This belonged to my mother. She was different from what I became. Softer, wiser. She would have loved you. Inside the box was a delicate sapphire bracelet, its vintage setting catching the evening light. Something blue, Richard said gruffly, and something that welcomes you officially to the Wolf family, though you've already taught us more about being a family than I managed in 30 years. As he fastened the bracelet around her wrist, Alexia impulsively hugged him. After a startled moment, Richard hugged her back. Take care of him, he whispered. Take care of them both. I will. The garden ceremony was everything they'd wanted. Intimate, elegant, and filled with love. Kaio waited beneath an arch of white flowers, his silver eyes lighting up when he saw her. Despite Eleanor's protests, Alexia had insisted on walking the short aisle herself. I choose him, she'd said. I want every step to be my choice. Their vows were simple, but profound. Kaio spoke of fate and wrong hotel rooms, of learning to love beyond ambition. Alexia spoke of walls coming down and strength found in surrender. You saw me, she said softly, when I was trying so hard to be invisible. You loved me, not for what I could be, but for who I already was. You changed everything, he responded, his voice rough with emotion. Every priority, every goal, every dream. You showed me that real power isn't in controlling life, but in embracing it, mess and miracle alike. As they exchanged rings, their baby kicked strongly enough for both to feel. Laughter rippled through the small gathering. Even Richard smiled. The reception was held in the garden's intimate restaurant, transformed into a magical space with twinkling lights and soft music. Olivia's toast had everyone both laughing and crying, while Eleanor spoke of second chances and learning to see love through new eyes. But it was Harrison's unexpected speech that touched them deeply. I've been in business longer than most of you have been alive, the senior board member said. I've seen empires rise and fall, but what these two have built, both in our company and in their hearts, that's the kind of success they don't teach in business school. That's real legacy. As the evening wound down, Kaio led Alexia to a quiet corner of the garden. The Atlanta skyline glittered beyond the trees, a fitting backdrop to their moment of peace. How are you feeling? He asked, his hand finding its usual place on her bump. Perfect, she smiled. Tired, but perfect. No regrets? About the small ceremony, about any of it? Only that we waited this long. She leaned into him. Although your timing has always been impeccable, Mr. Wolf. Has it, Mrs. Wolf? The new name sent a shiver of joy through her. Before she could respond, however, she felt a different kind of sensation. A sharp, distinctive pain. Alexia, Kaio's voice sharpened with concern. I think, she said slowly, your son has inherited your sense of timing. The next few hours passed in a blur of controlled chaos. Their wedding guests transformed into a support team, Olivia grabbing the pre-packed hospital bag from the car, Eleanor coordinating with Dr. Miller, Madison handling the logistics of turning their intimate wedding into an unexpectedly early baby shower. In the delivery room, Kaio never left Alexia's side. Gone was the corporate titan, the controlled CEO. In his place was simply a man in love, supporting his wife through each contraction, whispering words of encouragement and love. You're the strongest person I know, he murmured as she gripped his hand. You've got this, my love. Hours later, as the first light of dawn painted the hospital room in soft colors, their son made his entrance into the world, a perfect blend of them both, with Kaio's silver eyes and Alexia's darker skin tone, tiny fingers gripping his father's hand with surprising strength. Lucas, Alexia whispered their chosen name. Lucas Richard Wolf. Kaio's eyes widened at the middle name. They hadn't discussed it. But when his father was allowed in briefly and heard the name, the last walls between generations crumbled, as Richard Wolf, titan of industry, cried openly while holding his grandson. Later, when their family had gone and the three of them were alone, Kaio sat on the edge of Alexia's bed, holding them both. Thank you, he said softly. For what? For walking into the wrong hotel room, for seeing past my walls, for giving me everything I never knew I needed. Alexia looked down at their sleeping son, then up at her husband. Thank you for letting me in, for growing with me, for building something more precious than any empire. Outside the window, Atlanta was waking up to a new day. But in that quiet room, time seemed to stand still as two people who had once hidden behind careful masks held their miracle and marveled at love's perfect timing. Their story hadn't followed any conventional path. It had begun with a mistake, grown through challenges and blossomed despite every obstacle. But perhaps that was what made it perfect. Not its flawlessness, but its truth, its reality, its undeniable proof that sometimes the wrong room leads to exactly the right life. As Lucas sighed in his sleep, Caio leaned down to kiss his wife. "I love you," he whispered against her lips. "Both of you. Always." "Always," Alexia echoed, her heart full of a joy she once thought impossible. They had built their own empire, after all, not of corporate power or social status, but of love in all its forms. And as the morning sun rose over Atlanta, painting their new family in shades of gold, they knew that this was just the beginning of their greatest adventure yet. 5 years later, the autumn sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Wolf penthouse, now transformed by 5 years of family life. Designer furniture shared space with children's toys, corporate reports mingled with finger paintings, and the once pristine kitchen bore the happy marks of family cooking adventures. Alexia sat in her old favorite reading nook, now expanded into a cozy family corner, watching her husband chase their giggling children. 5-year-old Lucas, a perfect blend of both parents with his father's silver eyes and his mother's curls, led the charge, while his 2-year-old sister, Sophia, all brown eyes and mischievous smiles, toddled after them on sturdy legs. "Got you!" Caio scooped up Sophia, his corporate persona completely forgotten as he blew raspberries on her stomach. His hair had a touch of silver at the temples now, adding distinguished charm to his still handsome face. The sound of their daughter's laughter filled the penthouse, a sound that never failed to make him smile. "Daddy, my turn," Lucas demanded, climbing onto his father's back. Caio obliged, somehow managing to juggle both children while maintaining his balance. Alexia touched her slightly rounded belly, where their third miracle was just beginning to show. This pregnancy, planned and peaceful, was proving much easier than her first 2 adventures. The company had evolved with their family. Caio had permanently restructured the leadership, creating a more balanced approach that allowed both him and Alexia to prioritize family while maintaining their professional success. She now headed the entire strategy division, her innovative approaches having revolutionized how the firm handled modern markets. "Aunt Olivia," Lucas suddenly shouted as the elevator doors opened. Olivia, now a marketing executive and recently engaged herself, entered with her usual flair, designer bags filled with gifts dangling from her arms. "Where are my favorite munchkins?" Behind her came Eleanor and Richard, their weekly family dinner being a tradition that had grown more precious with time. Eleanor immediately moved to help Sophia with her wobbly walking, while Richard, now a doting grandfather who read bedtime stories with different voices for each character, scooped up Lucas for their secret handshake. "How are you feeling?" Olivia asked, settling beside Alexia while the others chatted. "Better than the first 2 times," Alexia smiled, watching her family, "though your godson is convinced it's another sister." "Lucas takes his big brother duties very seriously," Olivia laughed. Speaking of which, she pulled out a small gift bag. A little something for the new addition. Inside was a tiny business suit, matching the one she'd given Lucas 5 years ago. Some traditions were worth keeping. The evening unfolded with comfortable familiarity, dinner filled with laughter and stories. The children showing off their latest achievements, plans being made for holidays and futures. Madison, who still ran their professional lives with incredible efficiency, called briefly to confirm their reduced schedule for Alexia's upcoming maternity leave. Later, after the children were asleep and their extended family had gone home, Caio and Alexia stood in their favorite spot by the windows, looking out at the Atlanta skyline. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked softly. "The complete control, the total focus on empire building?" "Never," he said without hesitation, his hand finding its way to her bump. Some habits never changed. "This is the greatest empire I could have built. Every laugh, every moment, every tiny victory with them. It's worth more than any corporate achievement. Even when Lucas reprogrammed your presentation to show his dinosaur drawings. Especially then," Caio chuckled. "He's got his mother's talent for disrupting my perfectly planned systems." Alexia turned in his arms, studying the face she'd loved through so many changes. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" "For letting that wrong hotel room become the right beginning. For growing with me. for building this beautiful chaos instead of perfect order. He kissed her, soft and sweet and full of promise. Thank you for teaching me that the best kind of power isn't control, it's love. From down the hall came a small voice. Daddy, one more story. They shared a knowing smile. Lucas had inherited his mother's tendency to stay up reading, always hungry for one more tale. Go, Alexia laughed. Your son awaits. Our son, Caio corrected, stealing another kiss before heading to the nursery. Alexia lingered by the window, one hand on her bump, the other holding the sapphire bracelet Richard had given her on her wedding day. The jewelry had become her good luck charm, a reminder of how love could transform even the most rigid hearts. 5 years ago, she'd been hiding behind corporate walls, afraid to be seen. Now she stood in the heart of a family that had redefined success, that had proven love was the greatest business strategy of all. Outside, Atlanta glittered with possibility, just as it had that fateful night when a room key malfunction changed everything. But the real magic wasn't in the city lights or corporate heights. It was in a little boy's laughter, a toddler's wobbly steps, a family's weekly dinners, and the endless love that made it all possible. They had written their own fairy tale, one board meeting and bedtime story at a time. And as Alexia listened to her husband's voice floating down the hall, weaving dragons and dreams for their son, she smiled at the perfect imperfection of it all. Sometimes the wrong turn leads to the right destination. Sometimes the biggest dreams come in the smallest moments. And sometimes, just sometimes, love's perfect timing turns a simple mistake into a lifetime of magic. The end. Based on this deeply emotional story of Alexia and Caio, I've created an engaging question for you. If you were in Alexia's shoes, would you have the courage to defy all social and business expectations for love? Imagine yourself having to choose between maintaining a carefully constructed professional reputation or following your heart, knowing that it could completely change your life. How would you cope with the pressure from Caio's traditional family, the comments at work and all the changes that unexpected love brings? That moment in the hotel when she could have simply left the room and avoided this whole transformation in her life, would you have stayed or gone? Your participation in the channel is very important. Please leave your opinion in the comments. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like and comment your thoughts. Your participation is very important to us. See you next time.